Hello and welcome to the Cinebums podcast, the podcast about staying in, canceling plans, and watching movies practically until you die, and calling it a very fulfilled life. Um, I'm Luke, and of course, I'm with John as always. And
Yes,
we
hello.
have a new guest today, a friend of John's. You'd like to introduce?
Yes, this is my friend Simon, a writer director in LA. We met in college, and yeah, now Simon is out here uh, doing the showbiz thing, and yeah, I'm really excited for him because I just remember in college seeing a lot of creative things he did, and he's just also a really great and lovely person. So yeah, Simon Sager is here.
Wow, thanks so much. That's too kind. I feel very much the same about you. And Luke, it's been very great to meet you. Also, I feel honored to be a part of the Cinebum legacy.
Oh, that's what this is. Legacy.
Yes.
Legacy making. Woo.
I have read your Letterboxd reviews before. I think just because we've been wanting to have you on for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was reading them and I was like, okay, he knows a lot about movies. Like they're very, very well written.
Thank
For
you.
sure. Like my brother too, who helps us with the podcast, and also like a very good letterbox scribe who just knows how to talk about movies in a very good way. And so I was impressed. I'm definitely looking forward to talking films with you.
I'm honored. Thank you. Yeah, Letterbox is wow. I wish I was like any more of a social media person. That's just like Letterbox is the extent of
Is
my
the thing. Oh, okay. That's very respectable.
Made for
though,
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. Like, wow, I found my lane. I will never go anywhere else.
Yeah, Simon
Letterboxd
is a
maybe
great Letterboxd follow. So yeah, I'd recommend that to anyone listening.
right.
And yeah, Simon, you recently, I guess within the past year, got a writing job with Disney. So I don't know if you want to sort of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. Like, yes, I'm very much like still very much at the beginning of my career in LA and sort of like figuring out the industry and haven't been, out of grad school very long. So definitely there's been a lot of bumps in the road, but this last year was the time that I don't know, I want to think that I maybe started to like make progress on the path that I actually want, which I feel like that's like the biggest hurdle for anybody. I feel like maybe in LA is figuring out which path to take and like how to get your feet on the right path. And so, yeah, I have been very fortunate and loving my life in working in the writer's room for Grownish, which airs on Freeform. And
Oh, okay.
season 6 of Grownish. It was officially announced that it's the last season of Grownish. So, there's another legacy that I get to just like hop on the tail end of. What a legacy.
Right. A very already established thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel very lucky that I cannot say enough good things about the people who are in that room with me. They are so kind. I work as the assistant, so really just like most ground level, most basic thing that I do.
Mhm.
And they are incredibly open to my thoughts, to my my jokes, my insight on story, my pitches on story. And I truly couldn't have asked for like a better room to get my feet wet with, or really anywhere, even to grow old with. I would love to grow old with all of these people in this room. And it's very cool because it's still sort of like run like an old school writer's room where we have like
Right.
an 18 episode season. So it's really like we're in it for the long haul, which is just great for,
Right.
like connections and like really honing your craft. So I could not be more fortunate and blessed to be in the position that I'm in. I'm ecstatic every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't watch it myself, but I'm getting the vibe. Grownish is the sequel to, or the like just
Spin-off,
affiliated with
kind of.
Blackish. Like, yeah, it's just and all right, gotcha.
Yeah, absolutely. They're in the same universe. The first 4 seasons of Grownish follow like the oldest daughter from Blackish as she goes to college.
Okay.
And then the 5th and 6th season follow the oldest son as he is in college now, at the same college as she went to.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. aptly named. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. You knew. You picked up on it right away.
Yeah, with that,
no,
it seems like it'd be a really like diverse writing staff. I got to imagine too.
Yeah, that's such a great thing to bring up. It is so true. I feel it's very cool for me to be as a white person to be in a room that is like, the majority of people are Black people. And that is like, there's so much to learn from that and so much to, glean from. And like, even in terms of just like expanding my own cultural references, of course, I grew up in small town Iowa, which is a very white place. And so it's been really fun to expand my horizons. And I love pop culture in general. So it's been really fun to sort of like take on just I guess to hear what other people's versions of pop culture has been culturally as well for their lives growing up and seeing how those match up. And yeah, there's just so much to learn. I think in general, I think diverse rooms like that tend to be more open to like younger, newer, fresher talent helping, and because they know what it's like to have been marginalized in those spaces before. So yeah, I find it to be like a very open and welcome and yeah, very diverse and comfortable place to exist.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. And you're also a filmmaker yourself. So I
Yeah.
like with the new job, have you been still like working on your own things on the side, or is that kind of on hold until you see what comes next?
Yeah, well, it's nice because I do feel like for a while now, last couple of years, I've really been more set on like the writing path as the main means of my, artistic output as well as my professional passion. So that's really nice that those have sort of like come into line together and it sort of are the same thing. So in terms of like my own personal stuff, yes, I don't know that I'll ever be able to be a person who can't like write a bunch of things at once and do them. I love to have like 1,000 plates in the air that just like keeps me energized. But
Me
definitely
too. I overwhelm myself.
Yeah, I know. No, I don't know. There's something about it. I'm a masochist. I just like love the pain of never taking a
Yeah.
breath. I don't know. But I definitely, yeah. And it's really cool because now
Given to the blood.
yeah, exactly. Here we it'll time perfectly that what we talk about later.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's especially nice to be in this room because this sort of like, of course, I'm around people who are hilarious every day and who are like
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
best joke tellers, and so that really inspires me to
Right.
like, comedy specifically. My like personal writing path has been definitely like a mixed bag. It's been like feature for sure and like drama
Right.
pilots and then also
Not
comedy.
just thinking of one liner after one liner
Yeah,
all day. Yeah.
so it's
Which
been
of
really
course sounds very joyous to me, but
oh yeah.
obviously, yeah, it's nice to have some variety as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's never a dull moment. And I think like so that energy sort of like carries over into my personal creative output as well. And so I've been mostly writing comedy right now as I'm in the room, sort of like inspired in that. But I'm sure, as this job when I'm off this job, maybe, who knows what will come back, what will surface in terms of inspiration. But I'm loving being in the comedy lane at the moment.
Nice. Yeah. Is that where you did you like picture yourself doing more like comedic things? Because I remember one short film that we saw of yours, like forgetting the name now, but it was very like sci-fi-esque. And I know you have interest in sci-fi and everything too. So is a
Yeah.
comedy like is that something that you're looking to go further into too, or just you think you're open to like a lot of different uh alleyways, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would never say no to anything. Like, let's just be
Me
100%.
me too.
Whatever anybody wants me to oh, it's open to it. But yeah,
Right.
I think it's interesting because I would never have said that like comedy was my burning passion and that I was like that was never what my or what like I thought where I would end up. My as you said, like my passion initially has always been sci-fi, and I'm really interested in like
Oh,
sci-fi
okay.
fantasy and really like the modernizing of like myth. I love just the idea of myth and folklore and sort of like taking that and modernizing it for a modern world, for a queer world, for a more diverse world. Like all of those things
Yeah.
are I'm passionate about. But when I came into this job and as I sort of like really started to think about my comedy journey, it is funny because absolutely my passion for writing started writing comedy. I wrote when I was in like I don't know when I was like maybe 10 years old. I wrote this like series of sketches and short stories where I just flipped the gender of everybody in my family and then like wrote a dysfunctional
Wow.
family about them. And it was
That's
like very
crazy.
episodic. Yeah. And so like now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been writing comedy my whole life. Like that has always been what I've been drawn to do. So it
Yeah.
does make perfect sense that I would find myself in this
I can
position.
see why that would be a recipe for creating comedy because it's just a weird, puts your head in a weird, different space. For people that you know very well, you know what I mean? Like you could say if you didn't flip the genders already, a sitcom or something is there, and then you flip the gender. Wow, yeah, that's a great premise.
I was a subversive little guy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and I
Pushing the
love the idea.
envelope back then.
Yeah, exactly. I've always loved the idea of like writing dialogue. Like I love the idea of my whole life I've always been like, okay, you're gonna say this. Like I will tell my siblings, I will cast my siblings and say, this is what you're saying. And the more, especially the
Yeah,
comedy,
talk for other folks. Yeah,
exactly. You're just like putting dialogue. Like that's the at the core, the biggest thing I'd say that writers craft is, dialogue and
right. Hmm.
comedic dialogue. And so that has very much always been in my blood from day one of being creative on.
Yeah, I've always seen myself like more of a writer, and and being that way, I've always written endless dialogue scenes, and but I've had a lot of like more filmmaker friends who, when they write scripts, it's just like more like a description of shots over and over again, and so I like in that way I've been able to like see the difference, I guess, between myself and some of my director friends.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's such an interesting distinguishing like thing to learn.
Yeah, right.
And it's true. I feel like the type, like whatever format you're in, also makes a big difference. Whereas, like, since I'm in a TV room right now, like that is dialogue is
Right.
that's what we're
That's
doing.
the currency of it is being able
Exactly.
to.
Especially comedy, yeah, is dialogue. Whereas like features are more of a director's medium, and so the scripts there tend to be a
Mhm.
lot more I don't know if you've ever read There Will Be Blood script, but it's like very
I might have. I've read most of the PTA scripts. I'm a
yeah,
PTA nerd, which we'll get into in a second. I'm a
yeah.
huge PTA stan,
I love
Simon.
it. Me too. And his scripts are very much like you said, like very just like descriptions, very tone poem-y. Like he doesn't
Right.
care.
The later ones, at least. Yeah, like maybe
Right.
the era
They're
we're in for sure. Then there's Magnolia.
right. Yes. It's
Yeah.
a whole its own thing. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You have directors like Aaron Sorkin, who are obviously like
Well,
known.
yeah, I don't know if you know, but we just did Steve Jobs versus Jobs. So we've done The
Yeah.
Social Network. So yeah, we talk about Sorkin a lot on here, mainly because of me, I think. Yeah. But yeah, yeah, like I like my director friends, they're like into like say like Lynch or something like that, of course. And so there'll be like a scene. It'll just be like storyboards of like something that's similar to like a Lynch composed thing. I don't know, just trying to
Sure.
create feelings and horrific scenes and things that are trippy and like, stuff like that, if you can picture it.
Oh yeah. Classic.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around always. So I figure you had,
I'm
you
here
know.
for it. I love that.
But yeah, we are talking about There Will Be Blood today, which I'm psyched about, for sure. I've wanted to talk about that for a little bit. We haven't covered a single PTA movie in depth on this podcast, have we?
No, I don't think
So
so.
this is the first one, and
Briefly, but yeah.
partly it's me trying not to be like too selfish by like talking about a PTA movie a lot. I do pick podcast episodes very selfishly a lot of the times, but that's me holding back by not picking a PTA, um just doing PTA all the time. But I remember when John said one of Simon, your favorite movies is There Will Be Blood, I was like, yeah, sure, we'll do we'll
I
definitely
guess, yeah. I
we'll
guess we could
definitely
do
do
that.
that
Yeah.
one then.
I guess if he really wants to,
It's up to him, it's up to him.
Oh,
Um,
it is. That's so true. I love PTA, and I like you said, I'm also a very big PTA head. I adore him and all of his work. And yeah, There Will Be Blood. It just doesn't get better than that for me. I'm obsessed with There Will Be Blood.
yeah, I love that. And yeah, I love Licorice Pizza, for instance. It gives me great living in the valley pride, a lot.
yeah.
Simon, we call this section kind of our movie bender section of the podcast, which we used to do entire episodes on, but we don't anymore. um, so if you want to start us off and tell us about a movie you watched recently, it can be good or bad or weird or it just
New or
anything.
old, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like I feel like wow, this part of the podcast is invented for me. I like I have a very strict regime for my movie consumption.
Yeah.
My theater experiences are completely separate from my like at home consumption period, like, and
Right.
they often
Right.
overlap, and I both of them are always firing on all cylinders because I want to see them. But this last week, this is perfect that we're in the new week of a month, because the last week of a month is always wild, because I have a running list on my phone of all the movies that are going to be taken off of like the streaming services.
Smart. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's something I try to do, but I don't actually like follow through, you know.
I have,
Smart.
I
Yeah.
have like an anxiety if I don't. So I'm like, oh my God, I gotta watch all of these things. So I'm just like
Wow.
watching left and right. So I just got off of that bender, watching a lot of things, checking them off my list before they got taken off, which is also hilarious because such a placebo effect. Like it's gonna get taken off of HBO Max and then just put directly onto like Hulu.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know that that's the truth,
Yeah.
but
Doesn't mean it's gone.
yeah, I don't let myself think that. I'm like, you'll never get to see it again, Simon, if you don't watch
It's
it
their
right now.
it's their the marketing of the service working, luckily.
Exactly. So yeah, I did that, and then I'm going to see Dungeons and Dragons today, actually.
Okay. I've actually heard that's kind of fun. Yeah.
So I did see more recently, I did see Scream, and I have been
Okay.
I'll kick it off with that because that's like I was on a Scream kick in general, and I like my
Oh, aren't we always?
are we all, as we all should
Yeah.
be. And my conclusion that I drew was that like if like film bros get to have or like the Fast and the Furious franchise that goes on forever and ever and ever, then like my take is that the girls and the gays should get the Scream franchise. Like that's just what I think. I want that. I want to participate. Give me more Scream forever and always. I deserve at least 10 of them to match the
Okay. All right. So I'm very
Yeah. Right.
personally dedicated to the like original, like I'm very into the Craven and Nev Campbell series. So like I guess what hit me about these new ones is like I didn't look at it with that perspective of, like what like you're saying, the Fast and Furious, never ending, obnoxious, it goes on and on. Let's create new crap just for this property. But actually that is new way of looking at this, like and and story-wise, it is like obviously it's stronger than like the whole Billy Loomis daughter thing is
Yeah.
stronger than something they would do in Fast and the Furious. So I think that that's actually that kind of changes my like the way I look at the new Screams, even though the new one looks pretty good. Like the trailer got me, like that Courtney Cox in the closet scene is like incredibly like suspenseful looking and stuff.
Yeah. Have either of you guys seen the newest one, the sixth
No,
Not
one?
no,
yet.
not
No.
yet, not yet.
But did you see the fifth one?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I feel like because I'm very much like you, like I'm a purist. I love nothing. I don't think anything will
Right.
ever top like the original Scream. Like that is just iconic, and it did so much for horror, especially like meta horror and sort of like being self-referential. Like I feel like that sparked, especially for people born in the '90s. Like that Scream
Yeah.
is
Hmm.
such a huge part of our culture. So
Yeah.
forever we'll have like the utmost respect for that, and Craven. Like in general, Wes is like what a guy. Just like can I
Mm.
mean doesn't know he'd never quit, and so amazing. Love him for that. But I was so surprised. This newest Scream, I feel like I liked it even more than the fifth one. Like I enjoyed the fifth one. I thought it was a very fun, like update to it.
Yeah.
And nothing could come close to the original couple for sure. Like the first three are like so perfect in my mind as a trilogy. But then the fifth one, I was like, okay, yeah, on board for it. But the sixth one, I feel like this newest one, they really like upped everything. I feel like it was funnier. It was definitely scarier, more gruesome. Like I was like just very there for the camp of it the whole time. I felt like it was like even more self-referential and more self-aware than the fifth one was.
No.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard
Cool.
good things about it too. I'm excited to see it. And Simon, I probably haven't told you this, but in high school, Luke
Oh
and
yeah.
I, in our little
Just
friend group,
remembered.
we started like a Screamathon group where
Yeah.
we might have only done it once really, but we
Yeah.
watched like all four at the time,
Right.
all four Scream movies like in one night.
Like we had a Facebook group and everything.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like one of those guys where like I had the Scream box set of the original Cravens, and every friend I had, I would they would come over and I'd be like, we're watching the Screams, and like I had a couple friends one time who like they got they got weirdly inspired from it and were like calling people, like trying to pretend use the voice, like pranking them afterwards and stuff like that. And yeah, one of John and I's friends, Rick, from high school. Yeah, he really ran with the screams, and we're like, we need to do the screamathon. Yeah,
That's
kind of
amazing.
like the stabathons from the,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then with that in mind, I feel like the sixth one will hit you even harder. Just like what
Okay,
that
yeah.
is.
Sweet.
That is wow. Yeah, that's it's amazing. I love that. That's the friend group I want to be in right there. Day one, absolutely.
Yeah, and Rick also had like a nice movie theater room in his house
He
too. So
did.
you got to have a friend in the group who has
He did.
one of those, you know.
I was shown Todd Phillips's The Hangover in there for the
Oh,
first
Oh,
wow.
time.
wow. As it deserves to be seen on
Yeah,
Yes.
where it must be seen on the big screen. Yeah.
the treasure of cinema.
Yeah.
It is a very raunchy comedy that happens to be shot in a cinematic way for really no reason at all, other than I think he wants to appear very directorial and cinematic. Um, building to Joker 2 with Lady Gaga.
The musical. Wow, can't.
Yeah, yeah, no, I saw some shots of it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that's being made.
Isn't that crazy? I know it is. That I agree.
All right, but that's cool. I think I don't know if John and I are gonna have anything from this year, so it's good you're able to speak. You're able to speak for that. But
I
I'm
do
trying to.
actually.
Oh, you do?
I
Good.
do,
Sorry,
yeah.
John. Sorry to speak for you, but all right, then go for it.
Okay, sure. Well, I also saw another sequel in a franchise. I saw John Wick 4 this
Ah,
weekend.
I'm
Yeah.
going. I'm trying to go Monday. I'm trying to go
Ah,
Monday.
nice. Nice. Have you seen it, Simon?
No, you know what though? I like did it really weird. I watched the third one in theaters and then I had never seen the first or the second. And I just watched the first and the second one this year. So now I am
That's a
fully
crazy thing to jump into.
I like, don't know what possessed me to do it that way, but okay. It's my AMC stubs It's my it's my AMC
Yeah,
A-list.
Nice.
AMC
That's why
Stub
I just like
A-list makes you make what those kind of choices. Yeah.
just willy-nilly out there just seeing movies. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So
I mean, I think it would be easy to jump in to like the third one because the second, third, and fourth all kind of have the same,
stories like
plot going on.
minimal. Yeah, yeah.
Everyone is trying to kill John Wick, and John Wick is trying to kill everyone who's trying to kill him. That's the bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And I actually had Carly watch because she did actually want to see the new one. So we watched the first one like a while ago, and then this past week watched the second and third one. But I was thinking it's like, yeah, you probably could have seen the fourth one right after seeing the first one too, and I could have filled in the gaps for you. But
Yeah.
but yeah, with that being said, I mean, this is incredible. Again, I think each movie they keep upping
upped
the
it
set
again.
pieces and locations, and yeah, it also gets more and more into like its own world that it like does not exist in reality, and you really have to suspend your reality for a lot of it too.
Mm.
And in this one, I would say there's more like killings in public, in like very public spaces where
Oh, there's
the
like
cops
civilians
are never
around
called.
actually.
Yeah, people just kind of honk their horn when there's like there's like 30 guys all trying to kill each other, and then people are just like, get out of the
Hey!
way. Yeah.
I'm trying to get home here.
Yeah, I got a doctor's appointment. Yeah. I love this franchise. I think each one that I see, it's kind of my favorite one. And so now this feels like my favorite one out of the four. But it's really cool to see like a franchise that really cares about its like specific craft in it, like
Right.
the stunts
Mhm.
and the choreography, and the direction's really cool too, just how the camera moves along with these action sequences. I just think is really interesting, and it just keeps you like laser focused on what's happening. And there's so many details that you can forget after just watching it one time too. And yeah, I think this one just keeps upping the ante, and yeah, very, very exciting to see. A very thrilling theater experience.
That's so cool.
It's pretty long, but I would
Almost
say
3 hours, right? Yeah.
yeah, it didn't feel that long to me. These movies are also really funny too, just how theatrical and thespian these killers
Wow.
are. They're
Yeah.
they take their codes very seriously, and the
Yeah.
rules, and they don't just like walk into a room and start killing each other. They have to have this like Shakespearean
They build up
dialogue
some
that,
suspense to it,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. I just love how very much like it is just in its own universe in a way. And
Yeah.
uh
From
yeah.
a business perspective, it's so interesting too, because each John Wick movies, you said like the movies themselves are sort of like up to the ante. But I love box office numbers and sort of like statistics and all of those things. And similarly, like the movies themselves in terms of performance at the box office have also been like bigger and bigger and bigger spectacles and like made more
Oh
money.
wow.
And it's so interesting that like that franchise in particular is the one that like really captured the zeitgeist and is like what people want. I think that's like obviously it speaks to the you know the filmmaking that's going on, that's on display. Also like Keanu as a star and a person in general who like, you know, generation after
Yeah.
generation is just obsessed with him because he's such a lovely human being. But
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an incredible movie star.
Yeah, he's the one we all want. Like I feel like if we
Right.
could one movie star to represent us in the Hunger Games, like I would pick him and he would just be he would do so
Yeah.
well.
I
But
go between him and Cruise a lot
oh
personally.
sure.
Like when I got back into 90s Keanu, I was watching 90s Keanu stuff like specifically like Speed and Point Break, and I was like, yeah, this guy's definitely like he's Cruise level, like he's his own thing, you know what I mean? And he's also Cruise without all the insanity that like kind of goes with you know, the mystique of Tom Cruise. So like there, I don't know, Keanu is also a very goated action movie star and just a movie star in general.
He's Cruise without the Scientology, which is nice.
Yeah, Cruise without the baggage, you know, and
Yeah.
all pretty much.
Well,
Yeah,
even
we were actually sorry, go ahead, Simon.
I was just gonna say quickly, even his his persona is like so sweet. Like that's what he's
It
known
is. It
for.
is. Like I trust
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves very much.
exactly.
Yeah.
Nice man, always. Like there's, you know, not that nothing against Tom Cruise, but yeah, but
um
Keanu, he's got the personality to go with
like
it.
that scene on the
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore show. He's like where he's like it kind of went viral. He was like, if you don't fight for your love, what kind of love do you
Oh yeah.
have? And everyone goes like crazy on it. And he like stands up and walks away. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't handle this right now.
We were talking to after we saw it just about how much we love Keanu and how everyone loves Keanu because he's just proven time and time again that he's like a great guy and
Yeah.
so nice to people. But it's like because of that, we'll also just like glorify everything he opened a door for some old lady and we're like, oh my God, he is amazing. And it's like, yeah. Whereas then some other person may be like perfectly nice and didn't notice that this old lady was trying to get in, didn't hold it for him. They're like, oh my God, that piece of shit.
Yeah. When they're just trying to be normal and private and like
yeah.
Yeah.
But I still, regardless, still love Keanu. And in this, the last thing I'll say about John Wick is that there's always these new characters that they introduce into this world, and all of the new characters in this really hit too. Donnie Yen is so great. He's really like
wow.
and he's a really like complex character too. He's blind, but he's just as feared as John Wick. And yeah, there's some other characters introduced too that were just really perfect.
Do they use Donnie Yen better than Star Wars used Donnie Yen?
Better than what Rogue One?
Rogue One, I believe it was. It's
Yeah.
such a weak use of Donnie Yen.
Yes, they take full advantage of Donnie Yen in this. So
that's not something I remember I cared about till now. I was like, God, remember when Star Wars just misused Donnie Yen? It not something I think about every day, but
on days he's used correctly, it stings more.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah. But yeah, cool. I really need to see that. I do remember John Wick 3. I was like kind of maybe it was just my headspace, but I do remember being a little exhausted by all the killing for the
That's
3
fair.
hours. But you know, I could also see like it having the effect of like, you know, being just stimulating for 3 hours.
It really is like a video game, you know, like how the main character doesn't like he takes damage, but he's still always going and he just killing millions of people.
Maneuvering constantly. Halle Berry, I think, in John Wick 3 was doing the same thing.
Okay. One last thing. This is like a technical thing that I bring up too. Is just speaking of like the direction and the camera work. There's shot in here that maybe when you guys see it, you might think differently, but I feel like I haven't seen this before. But it's like an overhead shot of this building, like interior building, and they're going through all these rooms where there's action going on, and the camera is just moving through. It almost does look like a video game from overhead. And I
I
thought it
see.
was like really incredible. It
Okay.
was yeah. I really love that scene. It just sort of the camera is just moving across, like following from overhead, um, all of these scenes, and yeah, it's just yeah. I thought I'd never seen something like that before. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna change it up on you guys and the listeners a lot of a bit now with my a movie I watched because I'm going back to 1992 and this an Oscar winner of 1992, an iconic Oscar winner. It's Scent of a Woman, Al Pacino's Oscar Best Actor Oscar. The famous hoo ha Al Pacino performance. Before I even get into the plot, this movie is so fucking weird. It's so weird, and I can't believe this is what he won an Oscar for. And I also can see why for 90s audiences, where people are like, wow, where people see a movie and they're like, wow, what a story. Like that sort of like, you know, what so where it's something basic like, wow, this kid, you know, took care of this blind man from the war and they learned something about each other, like that sort of thing. That's what this movie is. Basically, there's a kid who's named Charlie Sims, name not important, who studies at a private prep school, and he needs some money to basically go back and visit his family. So he finds a job looking after retired U.S. Army officer Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade, who is a blind, basically who's played by Al Pacino, and he's a blind man who's living in like basically a house behind his nieces, and he's very high maintenance, very angry and loud, outspoken, will say anything that's on his mind, and kind of just hard to be around, not just for this kid, but also to watch as a viewer, because he just says anything. And that's kind of the dynamic. This kind of very soft-spoken kid is around this very unfiltered Al Pacino, who's very frustrated with being blind, and also an alcoholic, and also very suicidal. And so you can see there how there's a lot of where kind of the story can come from in this movie. Like there's they end up going to away to New York together for a weekend, so that Pacino can essentially live it up. And there's some great like kind of goofy moments where like Pacino dances with this young girl in front of like a whole like just a bunch of rich people at a hotel, and it's kind of like you're kind of wondering how can he dance like that? He's blind. It must be all like mental memory. He has like he's that great of a dancer and stuff like that. And there's a scene where he's driving like around very well, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. How is he able to do that? But like overall, this movie's very it's very tiresome, and it's I think the story isn't as meaningful as it thinks it is. And it gives Al Pacino a vehicle to do what he did in the 90s, which is mainly talk a lot of shit and seem like you're coked out, for which is mainly his 90s thing. Um, and intimidating others, which he does a lot in this. But I think obviously we could say that Al Pacino could have won for a lot of other movies. Just maybe, as you could say, that Leo could have won his Oscar for a lot of other movies, and this is one of those
Hmm.
lifetime achievement awards. I think this movie overall is very bad, but also I think that at the same time, it is objectively iconic.
Sure.
You know, so like if you catch my drift there. I would recommend it if you're looking for something cringe and ridiculous and something that you're like you can't fathom for most of it. Yeah, Scent of a Woman.
Yes, Scent of a Woman. I was in a Pacino barrel too. I watched Heat this week. Have you guys?
Yeah,
Have
I
yeah,
love Heat
Mhm.
it's just so
a
funny. Like
lot.
hearing you talk about it now, it's like, wow. I feel like the Academy just blew their load. Like, come on, guys, you could have given him the Academy Award for Heat, where he is,
Yeah,
and
a
that
few
was
years later.
just so yeah, like so few years later. Come on. That's hilarious. That
Yeah,
Scent.
and you could almost say like I said, the cocained out Al Pacino, where like he has the same acting approach. It's just instead he's in a Michael Mann masterpiece, so it's being used in the right way. You know what I mean? It's
Sure.
just like if he's in the right, you know, car or whatever,
Yeah.
however you want, whatever metaphor you want to use, then it can be amazing or it can be just incredibly off-putting, you know, depending on what it is.
Yeah, nice. I still have not seen Scent of a Woman yet, and
And that's fine,
I
John. That's
don't know if I
okay.
will based on your review, but
It's not, I don't, yeah, I would, I think it is fun. Like you have to be, I don't know. I love good camp. I love cringe. I will watch,
Mhm.
I love a good on
Right.
letter.
That's why I turned it on because I knew it was
Yeah,
good. I love cringe.
yeah. So there's something to it
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, it's like certainly not one of those ones that I like think back and I'm like, wow, that is just Al Pacino firing on all cylinders. Like definitely not that. My other, I was ashamed of this. It took me so long to get to these movies, but I also just recently watched the first two, and I need to finish. I haven't finished the trilogy, but the before trilogy, I started the
Oh my
first two for
God. Those are
the
some of
first
my
time last weekend.
favorites. I
Wow,
love those so much.
they it blew my mind, like the way how
Yeah.
they are.
Hmm.
And I love Linklater. I've always, I've been long been a Linklater fan. I feel like my like first real experience with him was actually Boyhood, and that was when I was like, oh
Oh
wow,
wow.
like this guy is really cool. And then from there I sort of like retroactively explored more of his things. And I used to work with the guy who does all of the rotoscoping for the Linklater rotoscoping stuff. Tommy Pilata is his name. So like I have yeah, a weird relationship with like his new one, Apollo 10 and a half, I think it's called, and then like Waking Life and Scan Darkly, because those I like
Mhm.
really was I heard a lot of stories about those. So I have like a special relationship with those. It's very cool. But I had never seen the Before trilogy, which is so
Yeah.
and they both like the both of them, the first two really blew my mind. I didn't it like whoa, the way that
Well,
they
I'll say get to the third one. It is also mind blowing and very different. It's the most cynical one of the trilogy, actually.
okay.
Which so I find it interesting. Some people don't like it as much, but it's interesting. I'm into the Before trilogy so much that I will watch it like in a day. That's how into it I am. Yeah,
I
like
love that.
like the way someone will watch. I gotta watch Star Wars trilogy in a day. I'm like that with the Before trilogy. I think it works. You know, I don't know for some reason like I seen them all at once like is very fulfilling. Because of the themes and because it's about time and it's just like a type of it's like a world I don't want to leave.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there's something so fantastical and warm and cozy about it, but also like
Yeah,
especially the second one, it's like very they're not like happy. They don't feel like cookie cutter. They don't feel like fairy tales
right,
because very like there's a
right,
reality that sort of creeps in,
yeah,
and like Linklater's so good at using that so the color of the reality to like
yeah,
enhance
hmm,
the images as a whole and sort of like letting us feel that with them. And no, I mean, and also those kinds of love stories are just my favorite. The ones that are like there's like a tinge of like melancholy in them, like a tinge of remorse or regret, or something
yeah,
like the clock is ticking down. Like those are
yeah,
so effective to me. And so yeah, both the first two had that, and I absolutely need to get to the third one.
yeah. No, Sunset definitely gets like more real and adult,
Yeah.
and I find that one yeah very interesting too. And then yeah, and then like Midnight is like a perspective for people who are like twice our age, but I was like, it made me feel like I don't know, get in that headspace actually. And they're all written by like Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy like are as heavy collaborators on the script as Linklater, so it's like an incredible like open writer director like actor collaboration where everyone's ideas are put into like the endless talking that takes place during these
Yeah, and it's the best kind of talking too, because it is like, I don't know,
Yeah,
it's talking that's so hard to put into a film. Like, so often
right.
from film school, so like the way you learn to write is like, oh, it's like stay away from exposition.
Structure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it has to all be like on character and like building, but then it also needs to be interesting and like moving the
yeah.
plot forward. And these movies just simply don't care about like plot. They're like, it's all about character,
No, what? No.
about
Yeah.
like deepening the characters and really like having these conversations that I think in real life, like when I have them in real life with friends or whatever, or romantic partners, like that gives me such joy and such life, and they're so sacred. So to
Hmm.
see those kinds of conversations like displayed on the screen is very special and so cool.
For sure. Yeah, and the fact that they don't come off as like snobby and pretentious or anything like
Yeah.
they don't turn you off because there's a lot that try to do that this thing that I've like a lot of followers that try to do it and they do. So that's the most impressive thing is that they come off as down to earth and like empathetic and also philosophically rich. Yeah, get to the before midnight after you see what
Yeah.
I forget what you're seeing after this.
Oh, after my Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah, yeah, after Dungeons and Dragons, watch
Good
Before
double
Midnight.
feature.
little palate cleanser after.
Right. After your escape, could watch something real after.
Yeah, exactly. Hard hitting.
But yeah, I guess one I'll bring up is I don't know if you guys have been watching Poker Face at all, the Natasha Lyonne show.
The Ryan
Well,
Johnson.
No.
yeah, Natasha Lyonne, Ryan Johnson show, kind of a la Columbo mystery series that's on Peacock right now. But yeah, we just watched all through it and really loved it. And a big reason is because Natasha Lyonne is so great and she's so cool and likable. And I feel like now she's had a really interesting life, and now she's gone from like child star through really the rough times that a lot of child stars go through, and now she's like she's getting her flowers now, and she deserves it. So yeah, just after watching Poker Face, just wanted to see some of the early stuff that I maybe have missed of hers, and I didn't realize she was kind of like an indie darling back in the day too. And so yeah,
Oh.
we watched Slums of Beverly Hills
Wow, a class.
recently. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. And I think there maybe are some somewhat problematic things that occur towards the end of it, but at least that's some criticisms I've seen of it online like today. But I think it was a really great drama comedy of this family who's sort of living in the slums of Beverly Hills, so to speak. This New York Jewish family with Alan Arkin as the father, David Krumholtz is the older brother, Natasha Lyonne, and then they have another younger sibling as well. But it's a great like coming of age story of Natasha Lyonne. It starts out with her trying on her first bra, and she's kind of going through these just these teenager stages of life while her family is just always on the move, moving on to something new because of her dad. And then they also have the sort of rich family members, Alan Arkin's brother, and then his daughter Marissa Tomei, who also comes into the mix, who is also so great in this as well.
Great cast overall, just like
Really great
everybody you
cast.
mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just a great like 90s indie film that's very like I don't know, very very grounded. Just it feels like it's kind of like a cozy movie despite a lot of bad shit happening to this family. But yeah, the family dynamic is great between all of them. I think um it's really like yeah, there's something about Natasha Lyonne that is so like magnetic that she's just so yeah, just so cool and interesting to watch on screen. And I think this is like a good sign of like things to come for her. And I'm so happy that she's doing all these great things now because she is just so likable. And now I've been like watching all these interviews with her and everything too, and I think she has a really good outlook on life at this point. And she is a huge like film buff and movie nerd. And it's so clear like in any interview with her, she's just such a dork about cinema and what she loves. So yeah, it's cool that she's making things now based on what she grew up loving too. So yeah, that's Slums of Beverly Hills. Yeah.
So good. The shout out to the director of that too, Tamara Jenkins. Have you seen any of her other works?
I
I've
don't
heard
think
of that.
so.
I've heard what has she done?
She's good. She hasn't done a lot. She's done like I think only just two other ones that I can think of. The one is The Savages, that was like the follow-up to Sons of Beverly Hills, and
No
then she
way.
did the Private Life with Paul Giamatti and Catherine Hahn. That was like a couple years ago.
That's what I know. That's what I know
Yeah,
her from. Yeah, Private
Mm.
Life.
yeah, it had like a awards buzzy that I think that
So
was
she's yeah, like indie, like writer director. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm into that style exactly of
she's very
what
cool.
this
Yeah,
is. Okay.
I would recommend.
Gets big actors to be in the smaller, more
Yeah,
writing focused
yeah,
indie movies.
The Savages is Philip Seymour Hoffman and Laura Linney. So like
Oh,
exactly.
that's also why I know her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like great cast all around, like always working on they're all firing on all their cylinders and like really always like very interesting, real grounded type situations too. Like there's definitely they're entertaining and there's not really, it's not like they're boring by any means, or stuffy, but they all feel like grounded in some sort of reality and realism. That's always very fun to see, I feel like.
All right, the clock
All
is
right.
on. The clock is ticking.
4 minutes to talk about this, and it's not that significant, so I think I can do it. All right. So I don't know about you guys, but I am personally not a huge fan of the state of Texas.
Yes.
Take it or leave it.
we'll,
Yeah.
we'll start we'll start that off. So that leads to the movie I watched, which is by Office's Ryan Howard, ladies and gentlemen. PJ Novak's directorial debut, I believe, Vengeance. Which I wanted to see. I wanted to support Ryan Howard, of course, guys. But and so I'll say right off the bat, this is a movie that basically is trying to, like, BJ Novak plays a guy who's a journalist writer from New York who's like, you know, he's on one of the coasts, he's liberal, he's a little snobby, blah blah blah, and he looks down on the state of Texas. So he goes to Texas to try to like cover the story, and he essentially learns about the real Texas and about the real heart of Texas and the beauty of Texas, if you will. I mean, I bought it somewhat. I bought the idea, I guess. It's very Coen brothers influenced, I will say. I will say he is very blatantly ripping off something that the Coens would try to do and not doing it as well at all. Not to blame him, who would do it as well, you know? But like when I'm watching, I'm like, okay, BJ Novak, I can see you're trying to do the Coen brothers. So overall, I would say it's okay. It's okay. I there's a lot of things I like. There's a lot of obvious things about it I don't, such as, like I said, the Coen the Coen brothers thing. But you know, like but overall, I like what it's going. I like what it's going for. You know, it's nice what he's like. He's really like trying to do something nice out of it. Like in a country that's so divided. This movie overall has a message that's trying to bring people together. And if you're into like a mystery in like in a mystery in a more mainstream area of America, with like unique folksy characters. That's kind of what this movie has. So yeah, that's Vengeance by Ryan Howard.
Yeah, he will always be Ryan Howard, no matter what. But yeah, I still haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list, obviously, just to see what BJ Novak can do. And yeah, I'm interested to see it too, because I feel like he can come across a little in interviews. I don't know how much you guys have seen of him. He can come across as a little pretentious
Right.
and kind of off-putting in a way, but
Right.
I mean, his comedy writing in The Office, I
Is
really enjoyed. So I'm just interested to see what he makes when he's like on his own doing his making his
Yeah.
own films. Yeah.
And I think in this he is trying to reckon a little bit with like what you're saying about his
Mm.
maybe how he is and stuff like that, and trying to like be a little self-deprecating and honest and all that stuff.
Let's get into the main feature for this episode, is There Will Be Blood, which I'm very excited to have Simon on for this episode, because I've wanted to have Simon on for a long time, because you're just out there in the film world, and we've had great conversations about film. And I remember, I think this was probably when we were in San Diego a couple of years ago, maybe driving to LA, that we were talking a lot while Carly was sick in the back seat. We were trying to ignore that and
Gotta
talk
tune it
about
around.
Paul Thomas Anderson. Yeah. And yeah, so I just remember you talking about There Will Be Blood and how that was your favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. And I know I'd only seen it one time. This is only the second time now that I've seen it. And I really haven't rewatched PTA a ton. But I think every time I do, like, that becomes my new like favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movie. You know, I think the time I rewatched Boogie Nights, I was like, maybe this is the favorite. And then like
That's
Punch Drunk
generally how
Love,
it
and
goes.
right? Yeah, yeah. And now I've rewatched this and I think maybe this is my favorite PTA. You know, it's very hard to decide. But yeah, that's what kind of sparked this episode, I guess. So yeah, I'm very excited to have you on, Simon, to talk about this. And Luke, of course, I know you're a huge PTA head too.
Yeah.
So
You can mention me. When did you first see it, Simon? What age were you, and like what did you think?
Yeah, well, okay, you know what? Honestly, I came to this one specifically fair like later in life. I think I probably watched it when I was maybe like 23 or something like that.
Okay.
Like before I moved out to LA, definitely, but not it wasn't like one of those initial movies that I was like, "Oh, I want to make movies because of this one." Like that never really did that for me.
Right.
Or, like I didn't like in the moment I wasn't like, "Oh, this is I'm going to build my whole identity around this film."
Hopefully not.
Yeah. But with that said, it is crazy to me how like every time I rewatch it, I'm reminded just like how deep it is in my bones and how like much
Yeah.
I love it and how like I really do draw from it whenever I am writing specifically. Like I think that the first time I saw it might have really been the awakening for me of like, oh, you love like really dark, messed up, unlikable characters. Like that is what I love the most. That's what I'm most drawn to and I find just like endlessly watchable. I
Yeah.
love that there's like nothing redeeming about Daniel Plainview. Like I just that makes me so excited to watch him squirm and be crazy and wild. And yeah, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh yeah, like I drew so much inspiration from this film always in all of my work that I do. It always comes up. It's always one of those like sources of inspiration again and again and again in terms of like rich character dynamics.
yeah, I agree. I don't remember actually the first time that I watched it, but I know I was definitely late to it. And I would say, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but on surface level, I could see this as being something that would appear to be boring a little bit. Just thinking
Yeah.
about an oil baron, okay, yeah, whatever, why do I care? But there's just something about these
Right.
characters, and
Right.
specifically Daniel Plainview, that it is just like a gripping horror movie
Yeah.
at times. So yeah, it's yeah, I also just am endlessly entertained by this. And Daniel Day-Lewis just yeah, he's just on another level. Yeah.
Yeah. What a guy. What a it's like it's crazy how good he is. I mean, like this is not again, this was also not my first time seeing Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, of course, that he
Mm.
had wowed me before, and I always have had him on my radar as like an actor that is just like will turn in top tier work and does not fumble the bag. Like it is just he's always giving you A+ work. But this, for me, is like I don't think there's a performance that is stronger. I think that this might be one of my favorite performances of all time. Like it is so
Mm.
layered and so textured and so grimy. And he just like Daniel Day-Lewis just is not afraid to go there. And for me, at least, like I also like something about it. Like I don't find him totally irredeemable, as I said. Like there's something about him
Right.
like
I think
watch.
so too. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like there's a very charming, weird, like dark element to like he's really like dark in a dark way, very charming, actually in this. And also I think the thing with all the stuff with the boy, like his kid who's not his kid, actually gets me to be like that. It is the one I think soft spot in all this, all of this stuff that actually like PTA is always able to draw very like very just sad, like tragic things out of a lot of his movies, and a lot of it's family dynamic, especially in the first three. Like Magnolia is 100% about
Yeah,
parents fucking up their kids.
sure.
There Will Be Blood really takes a lot from that and puts it into this. Yeah, and so I think that is the one like where you're like kind of rooting for him to be like, you do want him to be a good dad in a way in this, even though obviously he doesn't. You could tell he wants to be a good dad, even though he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. As he feeds him whiskey and lets him hang around the oil like rig all the time, and
Cool
clearly is
dad. Yeah.
prioritizing his oil enterprise at all times. As he's
Yeah,
like, but that that's also all about who he is. When I
100%.
first saw this movie, I was definitely not totally in tune with what the hell was going on. I saw it like maybe a little earlier, like maybe 2021, and I had just seen a bunch of mainstream cinema, and I was kind of starting to get a little deeper, and I think There Will Be Blood is something you hear in the air.
Yeah.
And you also hear, about Daniel Day-Lewis's iconic performance. So I definitely was like right away, like very intimidated by this movie. I think when I first saw it, I was like, God, this is so like, this movie takes its time. Daniel Day-Lewis has this towering performance that is insane, and I don't totally understand it.
Mm.
Um, and I didn't totally get what the movie was trying to say, I think, on the first round. So I've probably seen this movie maybe now like 5 to 6 times.
Me as
Like
well.
I've seen almost every PTA, and others are way more. But I definitely know what the movie's going for at this point. I'd like to say. And I also think this movie holds a lot of like, you could say a lot of people hold it as like, as a Citizen Kane for the 2000s or something like
Sure.
that. As that whole, like a lot of the themes of it, and
Yeah.
in ways, it's not my favorite PTA personally. I could do my rankings for you guys, but I think it's the most accessible one, maybe.
Mm.
Where it's like, it's revered, maybe it's the most like revered by the masses, to where like they know of it because of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance and because of the Citizens Kane comparisons.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been on like those decade lists. And I also think it's more straightforward than a lot of PTAs, actually, even though I just said it was confusing and I had to watch it 5 or 6 times. But I think it's more straightforward, like, than a lot of them. Maybe
Right.
outside of Licorice Pizza and Boogie Nights, I like because after this he makes The Master and Inherent Vice and Phantom Thread, which are not straightforward. And Punch Drunk Love is amazing, but it's strange. It's
Sure.
very strange
Mhm.
right before this. So there's a very classical side to There Will Be Blood, to where you can say he's drawing from this is not my own ideas. This is from interviews, but he's drawing from like Treasure of Sierra Madre, Giant, old westerns, things like that. There's a lot of classic Hollywood in There Will Be Blood as well.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think like with that in mind, like that is what to me makes it such a sticky like masterpiece that continues to stay around. And I feel
Yeah.
like just when I rewatched it for this, I was like really struck because I think I pretty much watch it, I feel like every year, but this watch really struck me more than any time before. I was like, wow, I feel like it feels more like current, and it's like
Yeah.
on the current state of like American life,
Yeah.
American like
Mhm.
capitalism.
It's
Then
a timeless American thing. That's what
exactly,
it
yeah.
is
It's
about
like
it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
so it has such dang power because just the way that it portrays like the American dream and sort of like
Right.
American hero and the American
Yeah.
sort of like what we and the world sort of like ascribes to America as like this like just
Right.
ruthless like pushing forward of business and sort of
Mhm.
like greed at all costs and sort of what
Yeah.
that costs us as
And
like
like the propaganda, hypocrisy of it,
yeah,
and the way they don't hide, they blatantly show he's a phony always, like
yeah,
especially when he's selling them on this, like he's selling to the people on this desperate town who's just trying to survive, and he's selling them on what the oil is going to do for the town. I found that just so interesting this time round, like where he's like, you will not only survive, you will flourish. And he's selling this whole message on that he's doing it for every other reason than to just make money for himself. It's like such classic American capitalism. And he, but he's also saying the right things. It's so
Oh yeah.
political. Like I think that I don't think bread should be a luxury. And like, I'm a family man. My men are bringing their families, no one's bringing their family, dude. Like, you see the tents, there's no family men there, and
Yeah.
like, I
There's
think
no
like
even any women in the film in general.
no,
There's
Yeah.
no, there's no women in the film. Yeah, and I love that how religion in this is
yeah,
on the same thing. They view it's the same thing. I love that.
me too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, Daniel Plainview's character is just such a perfect like embodiment of that like American capitalism, and
yeah.
he
Mhm.
even he just describes it perfectly about I don't want anyone else to succeed. Like I am
Yeah.
like it's all about the competitiveness and
Right.
how he's
Right.
using everybody else to get what he wants.
Right.
It seems like at its core, like, oh yeah, taking in that boy whose dad died, that's what a
Mhm.
great thing
And
to do.
using
But
him as his
now we
you
can say that
know.
he's a family man because of that,
Mhm.
and his wife
Yeah.
died in childbirth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything is so calculated for his
Yeah.
own gain. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of interviews with PTA on this more than me. But I just liked how sort of PTA would talk about how he had Daniel Day Lewis in mind for the character, but
Mhm.
didn't want to tell him too much about it because he knew that he
Right.
would, get the
Right.
basis of it and take it somewhere else.
Let him do his thing, exactly. Yeah,
Hmm.
like the performance is his own separate project almost. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um
absolutely. And I think like it's so funny too because Paul Dano up to this point is like very unknown, didn't really,
right, right.
and, and now of course he's much more lauded and is amazing, an
Mhm.
amazing director in his own right. Even I love Wildlife. Like he's so talented,
I
but
have
it's
yet to see that, but I'd like to. Yeah.
highly recommend. But yeah, this like his character here is so like it's just tit for tat, like such a great pairing. And I feel like we were just sort of like
Mhm.
just circling this, but sort of like having them represent the world of capitalism versus the world of religion, and then having them like face off is just
Right.
a brilliant like narrative move.
And
But
just see how they both prey on fear. The really like they're both
yeah, to draw the
yeah.
parallels between those two worlds, I think is like so striking. And that
Mhm.
I come from a very religious family and a very religious upbringing. So the religious elements of this film really, really speak to me as well and really haunt me deep.
Yeah. Right.
And yeah, they like leave such an impact. And I always forget this fact until I like do research about the film, that like Paul Dano wasn't originally going to play Eli, that he was just going to be Paul, and how like
Oh,
Mm.
that would have been such what a wildly different film it would have been to
right.
have someone else be Eli and someone else be Paul. And when I was watching it this time, I was really struck. I've never felt this way in the past. I've always like taken it at face value and been like, oh yeah, they're just identical twin brothers. But this time I was like, wait, are they the same? Like, did he just lie and pretend to be Paul and he's always been Eli this whole time? And it's like an
That
act.
is a deeper way. That
Oh,
is like one of those like theories that, yeah, definite theories you can have for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
wow.
I
Before.
also found, but I found it very interesting this time around at the end where he reveals to Eli how his twin brother took the money and is now set because he's owns like, I forget what they call the name, the old fashioned name they have for the oil plants that they have, but he basically owns one and is sitting on a pile of money. And then
Yeah.
Eli is like conflicted about his whole life because he's in financial ruin, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just revealing that that's all he cared about the whole time, and he's like, the Lord has left me like with all sorts of financial debt I don't understand.
Yeah, I know it is. It's funny because like in religion as an institution, and this is something that I've like sort of seen in practice on my own family and in my own life, like religion as an institution can be so dangerous and it can be such a capitalist machine. And they really
Yeah.
are, like we were
Mhm.
talking about those parallels. Like, yeah, what religion gone wrong is really it's really the same thing as capitalism. It's really just like all rooted in money and greed.
Right.
I think PTA like underscores that so masterfully
Yeah.
with these two characters and facing them against each other.
Yeah. And I also think like there's a Scarface like underdog element to the Daniel Plainview character, because he is trying to take down the man always at once. Like the movie starts off and he's just a dude like digging for it himself. You know, he doesn't have an enterprise yet. He's still building, and he's always so anti the bigger companies like who own the railroads. You know,
Yeah.
his whole plan is like is eventually to build that, I forget what it's called. Sorry guys, I didn't brush up on my technical oil terms, but like that the oil
uh,
pipes that go under towards the ocean, and he's explaining to
yeah,
HW, his son, he's like, then we don't have to, you know, we'll save our money on shipping costs, make the real money. And it's all, and that is all the like, you know, the capitalist idea, you know, eventually is getting, you know, what you want for yourself rather than giving it to the people that own everything. So I feel like also, while there is this like sick greed to Daniel, there's also that like underdog, like starting from nothing, like do it yourself thing that he has, like, and that he's relentlessly pursuing, that makes him also very compelling.
Yeah, and almost admirable, which is a scary thing. Like I
Yeah,
think,
that's exactly, and it makes you question yourself as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
wow.
That's. Do we find out? Maybe I can't remember. Do we find out more about, like, I know his like family history is like in Wisconsin and
Right,
on a farm
yeah.
and everything. Do we find out like why he left that, or why he doesn't really have a connection with them?
No,
Is
it's
that kind
kind of
of
left up in the air, but like I think that's kind of an interesting mystery that it isn't
yeah?
told, and you're just kind of assume this guy's like, you know, selfish and left it all behind, and you know,
Hmm.
has no family connections. And if you, and like also like his world in this in terms of relationships, you know, like Simon says, yeah, there's no women in this movie. Also, who does he actually, who is around him at all times except for his, you know, coworkers and like people he's trying to make money from, except a son who ends up going deaf, who he sends away. Then they replace the son with the phony brother,
Hmm.
who he brings along easily because I think he's vulnerable and lonely, and
Right.
you know, and then like once he murders him, and then the son is back. He always has like one companion following him at all times, and they're always just going to his like business meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like the one time he like kind of opens up and is actually like honest with someone, is when he thinks that
Right,
he's
right.
talking to his brother. He's like, okay, I can have, because yeah,
Yeah.
he is like lonely and vulnerable and insecure at its core. So yeah, it's he just finally admits, I don't care about anyone else. Yeah,
Yeah.
I only see the bad in other people, and I just want to make money and get away from people. Yeah, it's I guess that maybe that is a little telling of his like past life and his family too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I also think it's so telling of like off that John too, sort of like just him welcoming this strange man in with such open
Mhm.
hope so quickly. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's so desperate for this companion because
Mhm.
he has run away from that. And I don't know, I feel like that speaks to like the mystery of it or the hardship of it. I feel like to me, he reads as a character who like did come from nothing, who really didn't even have much to come from, and sort of like desperately wants anything to cling on to of that because it was all taken from him, and he might not have ever had really anything very established. And I don't think it's like hard for me to imagine a person like him had any sort of like familial connections, because those are such a tough thing to sever. And he just to me reads as a character who's sort of always been alone and has never learned how to like interact truthfully with other human beings, because he is so
Mm-hmm.
vacant of any sort of like empathy or care or emotion when dealing with anybody besides himself.
Yeah, and if you look at like the cast of this movie, it's actually very striking how few like characters there really are. And it makes it in the end just about like Daniel Plainview. Like I forget what, I'm trying to find what the brother's name is. But like I was looking at the IMDb one day and I was like, the brother is like the second build person, and then it's like HW and then Paul Dano, and I'm like, the brother is so like he feels so minor as like a
Yeah.
character too, but that just goes to show how like small this guy's world is, and like how like shitty he is at having relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah. It is so true. Like whenever I sort of like when I've stepped away from the film and I just like look at it from 1,000-foot view and I'm like reflecting on it, all that comes to mind ever is is Daniel Plainview and Eli. Like those two figureheads are always the ones that
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
to the front of my consciousness, and everything else is just sort of like a flavor for a moment.
Yeah, I love when he's talking to HW and he's like, I'm gonna give him quail prices for buying the original the ranch.
So great. Like even from the get-go, he is scheming. And yeah,
Yeah.
even the way that he like the way that he handles that with like Paul comes to him and gives him this insight, and then he immediately goes
Yeah.
to it's like, okay, cool. I can like pull a fast one on them and I can just be treacherous from the get-go.
Yeah, and even his kid understands like what are we gonna get? He asks when they're looking over the land, they just discovered the oil seeping through, and he's like, and HW's like, what are we gonna give the family? You know, like because that's one thing he left out. You know, he lays out everything like that he's planning on doing with the land, but he's like, but what are we gonna pay the poor family who's been like offering us food as we're supposedly hunting quail? You know, very wholesome, nice people as well.
Don't even have any bread, but they'll give you their potatoes.
Right.
People, those sweet, sweet
Yeah.
Californian.
I don't know if you know also, but this film was, I think it was shooting right by No Country for Old Men, was like a famous production thing. Yeah.
I love that.
That
I love that
they were
story.
shooting right by each other. Same year, big westerns, very iconic films.
Yeah. And and the accident that goes along with that, I'm sure you've read about that too. Did you?
I don't remember it, but I know there's something. What was
Yeah.
it
Oh, I
again?
don't
was
know
like-
about this. Yeah.
Okay, so they were both filming on the same day, There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men, and the There Will Be Blood team was like practicing their pyrotechnics or like testing out the pyrotechnics for the exploding like the oil well explosions. And they did it like I don't know if I think they only did it once, but they were filming so close together and it caused so much smoke that No Country for Old Men had to shut down production for a day to let the smoke dissipate.
Oh
They
wow!
were,
So is
like,
There Will Be Blood screwed over No Country for Old Men?
yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
I mean perfect, just poetic. Of course, it's
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. And have you guys seen any of the Bill Hader, Daniel Plainview impersonations?
oh
Those
yes.
are some of
Yes.
my favorite.
Which
Yeah,
in that
where
SNL sketch, I hadn't seen it until you told me about it, Luke. But in that SNL sketch, Fred Armisen comes in as Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
yeah. So they bring them together, right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
the Hader gets I don't know, just whatever Daniel Day-Lewis was doing, he gets just the I'm an oil man, a family man, like that whole thing hurts just down perfectly. And
But Luke, I gotta say, you've done it a couple times, and I feel like you're giving him a run for his money.
I'm not far off.
You're very good. You're very good at good Daniel Plainview. Plainview.
Yeah. Playing field, yeah, it's not much of a difference there.
No, yeah, playing some.
So I love how detailed the oil just the contraction of the oil is getting it. It's very I love how you could tell how much work and research went down into just showing how it was done back then. Like that's what the first 30 minutes generally is him alone just finding any oil possible, and also showing how dangerous it was.
Yeah, well, totally. And I think like it's such a smart construction. Again, this is just like amazing writing, and PTA is of course like lauded for his writing. But the fact that he chose to do this kind of story at this time with like oil against the oil backdrop is so perfect to me. It's like so poetic, so visually it matches like the themes of what he's exploring, and sort of like when you think
Yeah.
of oil, you think of like dark, sticky, gross, grimy, and like that is exactly what the characters are. It's like such a perfect reflection, and they go hand in hand so well. Like the backdrop of this film is a character, and it informs
Right.
the state of these people so perfectly. It really is like brilliant construction on all parts, and the way that it's pulled off in this like such simple, such like truthful ways is it's just again another like knife to the heart, where it just like so cuts through the clutter of everything. Like you don't have to have it explained to you to feel what is happening.
Yeah, and I think the most visually breathtaking moment of the movie is when they discover there's an ocean of oil down there and it blows up. HW like loses his hearing and he's just staring at the flame, and it's all like purple everywhere. There's oil going everywhere, and he's just staring at like the fact that he knows he found a fortune. And that Johnny Greenwood like heavy like percussions like beats are playing. It's just so, that moment is fucking thrilling.
It is
Yeah.
truly. I know. From the like Johnny Greenwood, we haven't even talked about the score.
Yeah, we
Wow,
haven't talked about that yet, but wow,
Mhm.
yeah.
that's like to your
The
point.
opening of it, especially, like
Yeah.
it's like establishing shot of like a hill, and it's like as if it's a Robert Eggers The Witch is like it's just began. And it's so unexpected too for something like this. I don't think you think that is gonna I'm going from, blank, haven't seen this, but I feel like that's an unexpected vibe for a movie like this, and just unsettling,
Right off the bat, yeah. It's
Yeah.
very haunting and
It's
scary
very
immediately.
horror, and I think the tone it creates, it's a fitting tone, it's an absurd tone. And going back to whole movie's absurd as fuck, and I think it's actually it makes me laugh a lot. I don't think it's
Yeah.
like a straight comedy, but I do like watch this, and I'm just can't help but chuckle the whole way through at what I'm watching,
Yeah.
It's like,
100%.
yeah.
Especially when you've seen it before, you like then you sort of get the joke. You're like in on the joke, and
Yeah, exactly.
that's what I think is so funny about it. Like as an audience, is every time I watch it, I like have to self reflect because I'm like, wow, I'm sitting here like giggling with Daniel Day Lewis. I like how
Right.
like
I just,
sinister
yeah.
he is. And I'm like, ooh, delicious. And that is
Yeah.
like so funny that the film has the power to do that to me as an audience member. And since
Yeah.
I've seen it before, I like know I'm in on the joke, and it's such a
Right.
viewing process every time for that exact reason. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, there's like an immersiveness that is kind of mirrored back and forth between direction and cinematography, performance, obviously, and then Johnny Greenwood's score that I think marries well to create a very absurd like tone and like very immersive movie. Um, One thing I found especially funny is when it's our first church scene,
Mm.
where Paul Dano is like, "We're gonna push the spirit out. Get out, get out." It's just like it's such insanity. Like I just can't believe every church moment. Like he's getting rid of her arthritis or whatever it is.
He says something like, I don't know if this is the exact line, but he's like, "I'm gonna fuck the demon out of you," or something like that,
Does
doesn't
he?
he? Something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised, man.
Maybe I watched a different version, but
Watch the Fuck the Demon
That was
version.
SNL
yeah.
stuff.
I swear something like that. I'm gonna
No,
have to watch
I
that
would not
scene
be
again.
surprised at all if
Yeah,
that's what he
me
says.
either.
He says,
But
says
he's
so
just,
much.
it's like all this religion like jargon that he's like screaming out, and then he just says that, and it's like kind of catches you off guard, like, whoa, this
Yeah.
guy's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the best parts of the film that are just like just when you think of it in terms of like beats again are like the tit for tat that those two characters have for each other when it's
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
one is they're just like the rivalry between them is so delicious, and watching them just like constantly switch who has the upper hand I think is so fascinating too. And I mean that's that's the movement of the film. That's like the whole engine that pushes it forward to the insane end that is I very iconic in its own right. And I feel like if there's one thing you know about There Will Be Blood, it is that there's something about a milkshake. Like that's always whenever I ask them about like,
Right.
the milkshake movie. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one, the milkshake movie.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, that is speaking of like the comedy aspects of this, that is so
Oh,
funny too when
a hilarious scene. Yeah.
he's just ripping him to shreds, just talking about
Right.
my straw is from way back here.
Yeah.
And he even just does like the sound effect of him like slurping from a straw. It's
Right.
so comical while he's about to bludgeon him to death.
Yeah, and
he's
it's the yelling of I am the third revelation, you
oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like yeah.
It's funny, like in that SNL sketch too. Bill Hader is saying all real lines that are in There Will Be Blood too. They
Right.
sound so goofy in this like
Yeah.
SNL sketch, but they're
2000s
real
SNL
lines.
was very in tune with cinema, and that's also why it was way better.
But yeah, I mean that sketch was like clearly like Bill Hader is a cinephile and he needs to do,
Right. Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe
For
half the
sure.
audience was on board, half wasn't really sure what
Right,
was going
right,
on.
right. For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a scene that pops up on my Instagram between Dano and Daniel Day-Lewis often, and I laugh so hard whenever it does because it's such a intense scene to just pop up on your Instagram. But it's when he's just like, I am a sinner, the I am a sinner scene. It'll just pop up, and I have to tune in and just like laugh to myself so much as it is because that scene it is very sad because he is like admit he's finally being vulnerable to like some shitty things he's done, but also I can't help but find it also so funny as and then it's the iconic given to the blood. It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. And then I've abandoned my child.
Yeah.
And I think Hader says that in the sketch too. He's
Yeah.
like randomly for no reason. There's no context in the sketch, but he's just like, I've abandoned my child.
And then Amy Poehler just like walks up and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah," and then they move on. Yeah. He
That
just
is
thinks he lost his son somehow, and then yeah, she
And
just
then
pops
she
up.
shows up. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. Whew.
so memory. I know. I think what makes that scene so funny too is like the element of coercion to it. Like it's like the same energy of like when someone forces you to say sorry, but you're not really sorry. Like it's like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
like that is what makes it so good too and so layered in their performances and the dynamics between them is like it should be a sad moment and it should be so heavy because the things that he's saying are essentially true. Like he is the horrible person that Dana was making him admit to being, but you just know that he doesn't think of himself as that way and he doesn't believe it. And he's
Yeah,
just saying it to get what he wants. Like it's another
Right.
form of
He's trying to
manipulation.
buy the last ranch that he doesn't own on this piece of land. Yeah, that's all it's
Exactly.
for.
Yeah, and yeah, so it's just like that. That's what makes it to me also funny. That's why I like it's such a crazy, absurd situation, as you said, because it's like wow,
Right.
like so many levels of performance and like trying to outdo each other and showmanship to this and like manipulation that they're just both
Yeah.
constantly operating on.
And
It's
they're still both very full of shit the whole way through, even though it is a very vulnerable scene
yeah,
as well. And at the end, he's like, Dano says like, and also brother Daniel has chosen to donate $5,000 to the Church of Revelations, which is what he said he would do at the very beginning, but never did. He
yeah,
never did. Yeah, and then that scene is brought back at the end because uh like before the milkshake scene, Dano wants to build like more oil wells over the piece of land that he bought because he doesn't think there's any wells there. But then uh he's like, no, have you ever heard of spillage? I've already gotten
oh.
sucked up all that oil up. And he's just like, no.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, explaining. I think he says drainage, and he's like,
Drainage, yeah, yeah.
but it's like so. Yeah, I don't know. When I think of drainage, I'm just
Drainage, he
yeah.
says, yeah.
I'm just thinking of like when I'm sick and I have like drainage or whatever, and then it's that makes that funny too when he's just like drainage and he's just explaining that whole
Drainage.
process to him. And
There's a interview that's great between it's Charlie Rose interviewing Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson, and it's just great because Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson are both um, not giving anything away. They're both being very mysterious to every question. It's just it's kind of just perfect because like you could tell these guys climbed a mountain in order to make this. Um, and Daniel Day Lewis is saying things, but Paul Thomas Anderson is being more like quiet and pretentious than you'll ever see him be in an interview. Like almost like he didn't, almost as if he didn't direct it. I recommend it. It's worth watching.
well, I think I've seen like clips from it, but never the full
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I've never seen the full thing either. I'd have to. I love them. Any interview that they are in. Paul Thomas Anderson is, yeah, I love listening to him speak about his work. He's very
Yeah,
fascinating.
no, in other interviews he does speak a lot about his work. In this
Yeah,
one though, he doesn't,
it's
which I
fun.
found to be funny and interesting about it
Yeah,
because I'm like, okay, it makes sense that he's in his most like above everyone stage when he made There Will Be Blood.
Absolutely. His I feel like that's like widely considered his masterpiece, whether or not, like true fans know that there's lots of levels to his mastery and he has many masterpieces. But I feel like, as you said at the beginning, Luke, like, yeah, blanket statement. This is, I feel like, what most people recognize as a masterpiece.
Yeah. I like Phantom Thread as well, even though it's fairly different, but I like Phantom Thread in its own right a lot.
I love Phantom Thread. My favorite mode of Paul Thomas Anderson is when he's like doing this like weird Phantom Thread and There Will Be Blood type, like costumey, like very period.
Yeah, very period. Yeah.
I love that's when I love him the most.
Yeah, and another good Greenwood score. Very different, beautiful strings, but very pleasant. Unlike the more treacherous There Will Be Blood score. Yeah.
Cloyed.
Yeah.
I also like how the score, like the There Will Be Blood score, kind of comes up out of nowhere, like creeps up on you. There's like these moments you can feel are getting very tense.
They faded in.
And then it starts slowly coming in like Jaws or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lurking behind every oil spill.
Yeah. Daniel Plainview's spin is always sticking out of the oil. Yeah.
It's coming towards you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Simon, for joining us. So excited you joined us today.
Wow. It has been a true delight. The pleasure's been all mine. Anytime I can riff about my love for Paul Thomas Anderson and Lewis, that's the best day of my life. So a highlight of the month. I know we're only in day 2 of the month, but this will be the highlight.
Yes. Oh yeah. This is definitely the highlight
until
of my April.
Dungeons and Dragons, of course.
Yes. Oh, of course. No, of course. Yeah. I'm sure Daniel Day-Lewis has nothing on, Chris Pine chasing an elf.
Yeah. There's actually a great clip I saw on Twitter the other day of an outtake from the original Dungeons and Dragons movie, and it looks really terrible. So yeah, I'm glad this one's getting some good reviews, because I'm excited to check it out to see what it's all about. I guess that's all. Simon, hopefully we'll have you back on again.
Definitely.
Anytime you want to talk film, I'm ready. Even if even if it's just from the comments, if it's just while I'm listening to myself while I'm listening to you guys on other episodes, I'll be talking along.
Perfect. Yeah.
I'm looking for a place to interject, but they don't know I'm here.
What is happening?
Yeah, pause it for yourself. This is how I would respond.
Yeah. There we go.
And definitely follow Simon on Letterboxd. He's a great follow on there.
Yeah.
We'll probably link it in the description.
Sure. Do it. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. That's where we see them all. It's all for the love of cinema. That's what we're doing out here.
Yeah.
Celebrities in the movies, right, Luke? That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Margot Robbie buying you coffee.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to have it. Woo.